Good evening and welcome to Hot Topics from the Soul. It's Tuesday and it's election day in some states. I have my co host with me.
And good evening. This is Dr. J.R. Thicklin, and I'm so glad to be with you on this first Tuesday in the month of November. And as you just heard, it's election day for different cities and municipalities and states. And not only is this election day, but it's a time really of awakening, refreshing, and I like to say being alert. In other words, let's be woke in this time.
Well, Dr. J, we could be woke in so many different areas of our lives, like I said, election day. And I hope and I pray
Exactly.
that, we be talking on the show. And I hope that you exercised your right and went and voted.
That's exactly right. We talk about that oftentimes because of the fact we live in a democracy. And one of the privileges of living in a democracy is to be able to exercise your voice. And your vote
Yes.
is your voice. And when we don't do so, then guess what? We don't have an opportunity to change the path, the trajectory of where we're going. And so therefore we have to do so, even if it seems like, well, nobody's listening. Well, I'm not going to vote. My vote doesn't count. If everybody thought that way, then guess what? Your vote wouldn't count because you didn't vote. So you have to make that work. Definitely.
And and we see the fruits of what happened when people didn't vote, and because they did vote because they wanted change. And look at the change that has taken place. We have so many people that are out of work and pending jobs on the line. I just saw this Alaskan airline just shut down abruptly, just went out of business. No flights are going to leave, so people that book with them, they're just out of gas because they shut down completely. TD Bank is closing 51 branches across the
Yes.
US. So, no job is safe anymore. Well,
You
the safest job, I believe, in America is funeral homes.
oh my God. Unfortunately, a captured audience, right?
Yep.
Inside of that. So we have to be just so aware. One of the things we talked about in this show being called here, Stay Woke. And and I really want us to dive into what that means. And for those of you that are watching, if you're watching by way of any of our platforms, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, we want to invite you to join in this chat. Give your comments, put your questions there. But we also would love for you to share it with others, and let us know where you're watching from. I promise you, we're not on here just to hear ourselves talk. We're not on here because of the fact, hey, it's a fad. But we're really here because of the fact we like to bring information, have interactive discussion, and bring some level, if you would, of information and decision and intentionality to what's happening around us. Thus, it's called Hot Topics from the Soul. There are things that are happening, and some people are unable to express it. There's some things that are happening around people, and they don't understand what's going on. All they know that they're in it. And so we do feel a responsibility to enlighten, to inspire, to bring to the forefront. But it's best done when people interact with us, participate with us, and and begin to share. Because at the end of the day, you might be amazed at what happens when we come together collectively.
Yeah, that's if we come together collectively. Unfortunately, everybody's me, myself, and I. And we really have to get back to how it was back in the day where we were our brother's keepers. Your neighbors used to look out for you. I'm fortunate enough to have great neighbors. And
Yeah.
that's because we established relationships. We should get to know who's in our area, because God forbid something happens and you need to knock on their door. You'll know whose door you're knocking on. So we got to be woke and build relationships, because they will ultimately wind up saving your life, perhaps.
Absolutely right. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important that we are aware of what's happening in today's society. That there's a scripture said, be wise concerning the cunning devices of the
Mm.
enemy. And here's the thing about it. So often when we start pointing out things that are covetous, things that are evil, things that are cunning, things that are undermining, people immediately become political about it because the fact, oh, you're just talking against this party or that party. No, we're talking to human beings. We're talking to us as a community, as a group of people to recognize what's happening. So even when we were deciding what was tonight, stay woke. Now I took a breath because the word woke, if you would, the word woke has been weaponized, right? The woke. That word was originally a word that was used, particularly in Black culture, meaning just to stay awake and to be aware. That's what it really meant. It was about, being aware and being alert to injustices, being alert to things that are around us, being alert to discrimination, all of those things. And it's interesting, the more we begin to use that word, it then began to be weaponized against us to be made something evil, as if it's some type of some type of evil word, some type of word that they've co-opted it to mean something what it's not. They discredit it, they mock it, just like they've done with DEI. Right? All of a sudden, DEI, oh, it's a terrible thing. Not at all. But when we talk about being woke, our wokeness meaning that we are aware, that we are shifting our attention to what's really happening around us. And we're living in a day and time now, and this has nothing to do with political party. This has to do with the reality of where we're in. We are right now, I believe, in day 6 of a government shutdown. That's what we are. It's about to tie the longest government shutdown in history. Inside of this, we have, along with it, people, over 40 something million people being affected by SNAP benefit being cut off or reduced. And in the same way, we got a head-on collision with healthcare and possible of the subsidies for Obamacare being, if you would, expiring and therefore sending everything sky high. All of these things are happening. And yet it's still the response that we hear is not one of empathy. The response that we hear is not one of really care and concern. In the midst of people possibly starving, in the midst of people possibly not being able to get the health care that they need, not being able to afford it, in the midst of people dying unnecessarily, we still have a political divide where people are more concerned about a candidate, more about a political affiliation than they are about quality of people's lives. That's what we have to stay woke about, because ultimately, everything that we see happening has been written about. And I'm not just talking about in Project 2025. This is the days of the Bible all over again. These are the days of Joseph. We may be basically approaching facing our own famine in the land. Our own famine in the land. People not being able to get food, not being able to buy food and things. And this sounds just right out of Revelation. And guess what? Our system has made it so. Watch what I'm about to say. Our government system, we've become so dependent on it that literally look at how they're controlling everything. They can control whether you eat or not. They can control that. We have to stay woke and understand our biggest reply to this is to come together in unity. Unify. What do you mean? Unity. There's nothing that ever have been unity over the history of time. As a matter of fact, there's a scripture that says that is there where God commands his blessing, where brethren dwell together in unity. If we can never get over things like party, we can never get over things like skin color, and we can never get over these type things here, there's some things that can happen. But isn't it amazing that people will pledge an allegiance to a flag and to a party, but will have no empathy or love toward the neighbor?
Hmm. You
That's what we
said
have
a
to stay
whole
woke
lot,
about.
Dr. J. Also today, former Vice President Dick Cheney passed away. And,
Yes.
he was a very viable, strong force in our government, not because he was Republican, but because he was for the people. And I think that we as a nation has gotten so off track, so off course to we're looking at personal vendettas instead of being a nation for the people, by the people. All of that
Hmm.
seems to have been stripped away, and we're under a regime that everyone is afraid of because of the backlash of what may happen if you disagree. And democracy is at stake. We had, like I said, elections that went on, and even those were compromised. Today in
Absolutely.
Jersey, they were having bomb threats. So that prevented people from being able to go and vote in some locations, and at some points closing down polls because of fear. So democracy is at stake because we, the people, are afraid to rise up and say no.
Well, in so many ways, we see exactly what's happening. When you use that word democracy, what we understand, one of the beautiful things about democracy, once again, is that not only does our voice count, our voice is our vote is our voice, but what we see is how valuable that is. Because all the things that we see, everything that have come to voter suppression, everything that's come to uh, corrupt voting, and when I say corrupt voting, it is when people are disenfranchised, when people are not allowed to vote, or you see these type tactics happening. When we begin to see what's happening all around, gerrymandering, where basically you redistrict maps of people voting blocks, and you put the people that are marginalized in a position, you redistrict them so that their voice will not count. In other words, you divide them up enough so that their voice will not have collective power, and therefore they don't get to choose their representative. But
Right,
when you
diminishing
redistrict,
power.
right, it diminishes power. So what happened with the gerrymandering, redistricting, all of a sudden, guess what? Rather than the people picking their candidate, the candidates are now picking their people. And that's not what democracy is all about. When we see authoritarian type things that are happening, do you not realize that we are right now being flooded with so much propaganda that is unreal? So much propaganda. Have you ever heard in your life where a leader would say, "Well, guess what? If you guys elect this person as mayor, I want to stop my funding to your state." Come on. Those are threats. We're weaponizing an office. We're saying, listen, there's an assumption that any state that is not red must be blue. And I think that's so sad, because even in the most bluest state, there are people that are red voters. In the most red state, there are people that are blue voters. So when you begin to divide people, when you begin to continue to exploit it, and the divisiveness in our country begin to get even greater, and then we begin to see a deliberate attempt to muzzle voices and muzzle movements and the muzzle, when we start saying, boy, we're going to defund education, we're going to do all these things here, it brings us to a place where now what? There's a controlling system, a system that wants to control. They want to control the population. They want to control everything that happens. And people, while we're around here arguing about stuff that don't matter, while we're around here worried about, did you get your bag and all those things there, life is happening, and the great big trap is being set, and people are distracted and don't know what's happening to them. But I'm telling you, we both said this back during the time of COVID. What is it that we said? I want to announce that life as we once knew it will never be the same. We said that. We said, look, just as we had AD, BC, before Christ, I said this will be AC, after COVID. And after COVID, what are all the things that we have seen happen in our country? We're more politically divided now than we ever been. Ideologists more than we ever been. No, I was driving this morning on my way into work, and I'm in the fast lane, and I'm driving literally. Okay, don't get me police. I'm driving right at 80 miles an hour. The speed limit is 70. And there's a person that's coming up behind me. I mean, right up on my bumper. I mean, literally. And so I eventually just, I sped up to move over to the right lane and in the middle lane. And as I did so, they passed me, and their passenger rolled down the window and, of course, gave me the Hawaiian peace sign and the bird and all those things. And you have to ask yourself the question, what is it that people are thinking? Where is it that they were going? Why is it that we're so, we've seen locally road rage, people killed on the road simply because of the fact someone passed them. Those things are there. Why are we so on high alert that everything takes us over the edge?
Well, a lot of people are stressed out, Dr. J, and unfortunately, that person that gave you the bird probably was running late, and he knew if he was late maybe one more time, that employer said you be late one more time, but sometimes we cause our own demise. So we're so quick to blame other people for situations that we're in and circumstances that arise, and that's how it is in relationship. One is always blaming the other. Well, if you would have did this, and if you would have did that, if you would have said this the right way. So everybody is at a tipping point right now because of fear. And right now, a nation divided by itself can't stand, will not be able to stand. And we are weakened because of the fact that we're so divided. And
we're so divided,
our military is being controlled by one person.
So the three co-equal branches of government is dissipated right before our eyes.
Right before our eyes.
And it does sound like an authoritarian. It does sound like that's what's happening. I've never seen it in my life. All of a sudden, the law and Constitution is being reinterpreted. It's being rewritten. I thought about, because this really oppressed me when I look back on what's happening. Now, let's just be quite honest. America has never been this great, beautiful place for all people. It hasn't. And yet it's still, America was once a place known as opening its arm for any and all. Come, send us your broken, your wounded, send us those. That was the battle cry of America. Statue of Liberty, that's a battle cry. Out of many comes one. We were welcoming. We loved our neighbor. We loved them. And then something has happened. Don't we sound like a nation that says only us, for us, and not for anyone? And yet it's still, we wouldn't be the nation that we are if it had not been for all that have come here. And for some of us, ancestry, we didn't choose to come here. We were brought here. And for others who did choose to come here, then all of a sudden it's like, all right, enough. We got to clear you out because it no longer reflects what we wanted to be. And I've never heard so much in my life. Things like emptying the prisons from other countries, sending us your worst people. And I'm yet to find any factual evidence. Nothing. I keep looking for it. Where is that factual evidence? I don't see it. But anytime you use your voice to divide, to polarize, to demonize, and then you weaponize, and then you do that by, guess what? You begin to erase people's history so we don't remember that this is just another old trick, right? It's just a rekindled old trick where we understand the power of oppression. and we're oppressing, and we continue to do so, and we squeeze people till they cry uncle. And when people are desperate and people don't have food and people feel this type way, you just said it, they ball over and they act out of their emotion and out of their flesh. And now we're waiting. What's happening now is a setup for the insurrection. Now, I've listened very carefully. The threat of using the Insurrection Act, and then to hear someone say, oh, it's been used many times by other presidents. No, it hasn't.
No.
Absolutely has not. When I'm listening to these things, I want to I pray every day for our president. I pray every day for our government. I pray every day God would steer and change the heart. But there's
right, because only God can do this. Only God will be able to
do it. The heart of
the
king is in the hand of the Lord. Like a waterfall, he can turn it. But when we take it and we begin to take the people of faith, begin to come and support, like, hey, this is right. Don't worry. No, it's not right. Call wrong, wrong. Call right, right. I don't care who it is. It doesn't matter to me whether it's a Democrat or Republican. What does matter is truth. What is right or wrong.
Absolutely.
And I do know this, that God is on the side of the oppressed, not the oppressor. And that's what I do know. And so what I'm saying is that we have to be very awoke and awakened to the tactics that are happening, because what will happen, all these, we'll get our eyes off of where we need and focus in doing this. Because if not, we will be away. We'll be withstand. We won't how we got there. So my encouragement, and those of you, we welcome your comments and your question. I am really encouraging you. I believe this is the time that I don't care what church or denomination you're in, we're going to have to come together. We're going to have to come together for the sake of the people. We're going to have to be that vineyard. We're going to have to do the food and bring those things together. We're going to have to do so, because when we get to a place where our government can control the people by food and withholding this and withholding that, that is a terrible sign. That's a terrible sign.
Absolutely, Dr. J. And also, when we're talking about the churches, Dr. J, those of you know that Jamaica and Haiti has been hit again. People are struggling. They need so much help there. I'm not taking donations. I don't know if your nonprofit, Dr. J, is doing it, but I recommend that you go to your church that you attend. And if your pastor isn't doing anything, ask if they can put together an initiative to help rebuild and restore, because by the grace of God, there goes I. It could have happened to us. We could have been in that situation where we've lost loved ones, lost our home, and not have anything. Those of you that are listening to me, just look around at where you are and what you have, and thank God. Be grateful for that and have the heart and compassion to share. So if you know of a church that is taking donations, partner with them and be able to sow into this so it can get to the right people, because most of the times when you go that route, they will take it directly to where it is needed.
Exactly. And that's why it's important. That's why it's so important that we do stay connected. I want to say shout out to many of the different churches. I know that we're donating to those churches and organizations.
Yes. I seem to be losing you, Dr. J. But there are churches and organizations that are receiving
names, but
monetary goods and everything. So you blacked out, Dr. J, so didn't hear anything.
Yeah, we went out a couple of times.
Yeah.
I was just saying.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, shout out to the different churches and organizations that are that are organizing, relief efforts for Jamaica. I was saying shout out to my friend Reverend Ray Whiteley for his organization and what they're doing also in relief, and so many different others. This has
Yes,
brought
the
us
Faith
together.
Center is doing an initiative. They actually had a meeting yesterday to talk about it, and you can find that on Facebook as well. The projects that they are doing in order to help undergird that. So please make sure you get a reputable church that you know that is going to take the goods to where it needs to go.
Absolutely. It's so important. I had opportunity on this past Sunday to visit church up in Port St. Lucie, Expansion Church, young, exciting church. Pastors there. Shout out to Pastor Rock and his wife, Shell. And one of the things they were doing was not only sending relief over to Jamaica, but they was actually assembling teams to go over and to assist in that
Right.
effort. And that's what that is the type of effort it's going to take inside of not only disaster relief, but inside of what we're dealing with now. Community must come together. Food
We
banks and
must.
many of our churches that do operate food banks and different things. Listen, many times they're saying, "Hey, we got food that people need to come get. We don't want things to spoil." This is the time that we have to come together. And I'm going to say to people, don't be too proud to go to a food bank to receive food and nourishment. And I'm really going to encourage people now. We need to start thinking about storing up our food, buying and storing, because there is something on the horizon that is about to happen, and we're going to need to be prepared for it. And that's not a scare tactic. That is just warning that we need to be right now thinking about how I begin to collect non-perishable, how I begin to have a storehouse that we're able to endure in times of things happening around us. Because it is obvious that we're living in a day and time where the forces of darkness is at work. But we have to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves.
Absolutely, Dr. J. I've been feeling it. I've been feeling it. I've been telling my children, I was telling my husband we have to have things set up so that we'll be able to eat when in the midst of a famine.
And famine,
Because,
exactly.
you got these tariffs, and now look, there's no food for individuals that are on the SNAP program. And there's everybody has food drives, but even those are going to be limited because of the so many massive individuals that are
Right.
out of work and going to be needing that. So it adds to that and diminishes what they had already set aside for those regulars that would come every week. And the housing is going to get worse. People are going to lose their homes because they lost their jobs. They're going to lose their transportation because they lost their jobs. They're going to lose their mind because they've lost their jobs. So we have to be prepared.
And so we say, stay woke, stay alert, stay persistent. Those of you that are people of faith, stay spiritual. I'm saying this isn't the time to cherry
Yeah, and
pick.
stop fighting in the kingdom. I mean, I've
Exactly.
never seen so many battles with ministry, and we're supposed to. Jesus talked about love.
Yeah.
So I've never seen so much a thing where the bickering and the back and forth and stuff. He said, "Love thy neighbor." It is the greatest commandment, as you love one another as I've loved you. So
Well,
if we
it bring,
demonstrate that and
mhm,
act on that, we'd be a better. We have to be the light.
absolutely. And at the end of the day, Jesus said it best. He said, "By this shall all men know that you're my disciples, not by the size of your church, not by how pointed your steeple, not by the fancy cars or any of those things, but by the love that you have one
Yes,
for the
one
other.
for another.
Demonstrate it. Demonstrate it. Love is an action word, and we have to demonstrate it."
Right. Next week, we're going to talk about healthcare, Dr. J. We're going to have individuals talk about, these renewals through Medicaid, where, why it's
Right.
important to select your plan, because you brought it up last week. Share a little bit about
Absolutely.
that, Dr. J, what we have to look up to in the horizon so that people could get prepared and be able to tune in next week.
Well, absolutely. You got to understand with what's happening here with the whole thing that's really holding up this whole shutdown is the fact that the open enrollment period right now for the ACA or Affordable Care Act is only running from November 1st, 15th. You've got to sign back up for this. It's not automatically renewable at all. Things are going to be cut out. Things that you once had, you won't have it. It'll be reduced. And so we need to understand, how do we apply? How do we maximize where Medicaid kicks in, and those things? We got to be on top of it. So I'm going to encourage you to stay tuned next week, because that information is going to be vital.
It is
And
going to be
those of you that
vital.
are caretakers, you need to know this, especially if you're caretaking elderly parents or elderly people in your family. You need to be aware.
Thank you, Dr. J. And don't forget, stay woke and also subscribe to Hot Topics from the Soul. Until next week, peace and blessings. Love you always.